Are you ready to double your real estate sales and grow your business like never before? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Real Estate Matters, hosted by Matt Curtis, leader of the #1 real estate team in Alabama for the last 6 years. With over 8,000 homes sold and more than 4,000 five-star reviews, Matt's proven strategies speak for themselves. Ready to double your sales with expert strategies? Let's dive in. This is Real Estate Matters. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Matters podcast. I'm your host, Clark Dunn, here with Matt Curtis and Matt Curtis Real Estate.
Talking about profitability today. That's unfortunately most teams don't talk about that, and this episode may not even do as well because we're talking about that. Agents want to and teams want to talk about lead conversion, all these other things, but at the end of the day, you have to make a profit.
Yeah, and so kind of to get us started, you've had the opportunity to talk to a bunch of team leads all across the country. Talk a little bit about how those conversations kind of lend itself to this topic.
It's really baffled me. There's so many teams out there, and that #1 the state or #1 their city, and you talk to them, and like they're burnt out. They just don't have enough time to train their agents, and quite frankly, they don't even have a business if they're not selling themselves. It's like the team itself is more of like an ego push because the team's not making any money. And literally, they would be out of business without their own production. And so it's like at some point, why are you just not selling, yourself? And why do you have a team at all? And I think the industry just pushes numbers and it pushes awards, and it's just a big ego thing versus, money's what provides for your family. It provides long-term wealth. It provides stability. You've got to make a profit if you want to run a real business.
Yeah, and we mentioned this book in a previous episode, or it could be a future episode, depending on when it comes out. But talk a little bit about the Jim Collins book and kind of how it applies to this as well.
Yeah, I think this is one of the big concepts. I think this is one of the big reasons why real estate agents get it wrong. Because one, they listen to people on podcasts and YouTube and all these different things, and they're like, oh, they're #1, they're selling this number of homes. I just need to go all in on what they're doing. But they're not asking the questions like, was it profitable? How's it actually performing for them? And so Jim Collins, great by choice, good to great, has a concept of firing bullets before you fire cannonballs. So if we're, at the time of this recording, U.S. has all these military ships in Iran. And so if the U.S., if we went back, several hundred years and we're not firing missiles, we're firing bullets and cannonballs. If they were to fire, put all their gunpowder, all their missiles into one shot and they miss, they're done, right? They're a sitting duck. But if you actually, you fire a bullet and you miss and you recalibrate, you fire a bullet again, you miss, you recalibrate, and then you finally hit metal, then you can go all in. But unfortunately, what agents do is they just go all in. They don't test. And so we're all the time, we're testing before we go all in. A lot of agents ask us about our billboards. Well, we test it before we went all in. But some agents, they just try to go all in. They're like, oh, it worked for him, we're going to do it. We're always, firing all these different bullets. And, if you're firing 10 different bullets, if you get 2 that hit metal, you're doing good. And so really what you're trying to do is you're trying to survive your other, what you thought were good ideas. And then just kind of go all in on the big ones. And I think that's the other thing that a lot of agents and a lot of teams make the mistake of is they just dabble in things. Say, well, let me do this. Let me try this. Let me experiment with this. No, like if something's successful, you need to really dig in and go all in on it.
Yeah, and so like as a leader in in your team with the agents you have and kind of the growth that you have and will continue to have, how do you kind of think about the different ideas that maybe you have personally, also with the ideas your team members have, and how do you kind of sort through those? Because like some things are working really, really well from like the marketing perspective or a consistency perspective. And some things you want to kind of dabble in a little bit, but you want to make sure it works before you go all in. How do you kind of balance that?
As a visionary and entrepreneur, and then also managing entrepreneurs, agents always have, good ideas as well. I think the best way I ever heard it explained was Dave Ramsey. He's like, I have, half a dozen ideas before breakfast and, on my run and all these different things. I'll have thousands of ideas this year. But the idea and the goal is to survive my bad ideas. Because out of those 1,000, there might be like 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 that were really, really good. And those are the ones that like hit metal, we're going to go really big on. But if we went big on all the different goals or all the different ideas, we'd go broke. And then the other thing is, I have a lot of agents that'll come to me with ideas, and sometimes they're good by themselves, but then you look at the bigger picture and it's like, well, our marketing team is already focused on this one, which we know is going to be a home run. This is going to be like a single, and that's going to be a home run. We just don't have the bandwidth. So if we took them off of this project to work on this project, where actually the net is a loss. And so a lot of people don't understand that as well. There's only so much time. There's only so much resources. There's only so many team members that can work on projects at a single time. And so you really have to prioritize what's going to be the biggest winners for you.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it too, like we talked about in previous episodes, figuring out what your calendar looks like and where your time is best spent. Because like you said, some of those things that maybe you used to do, you just can't do because that's not your role anymore. Right. And then also as teams grow and as individuals grow and as you see things from the perspective of like what's working and what's not working, you'll know where your time is best spent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, an idea that I picked up from John Maxwell years ago was just studying my calendar every year. At the end of the year, I'll spend probably half a day just trying to go day by day, week by week, month by month, and just write down notes. This was worthwhile. This was a waste of time. It's something I'm going to do again. Another thing that I started doing last year was I really wanted to be more intentional with my life. And so I bought these jars and I filled them up with marbles. And basically, I kind of calculate, all right, what's the average lifespan? Like if I live to 80, maybe I'll live longer than that. How many more weeks do I have left? And did the math, how many marbles would, each week it represents a marble, put all those marbles in a jar, and then take a marble out each week. And then spend a little bit of time like, hey, did I move the needle? Was I a good steward of the week that God gave me? And then I track all that in like a little Google Doc of like, here's the things that I feel like moved the needle this week. How I was potentially a good steward of what God gave me. And then that's something that I review at the end of the year as well. And it's funny, the things that I thought, oh, this is going to really move the needle. This was something super impactful. I'm like, oh, that was actually a waste of time. That week was totally wasted. Actually, January was not very productive. It's not as productive as I thought it was in hindsight.
Yeah, and I think having that ability and that the mental awareness to know that and to also review that is huge. And it's the success that the agents that are listening to this or anybody that's listening to this that they'll find in their career if they're able to do that too.
Yeah, I think a lot of leaders, a lot of agents, they just don't take the time to slow down. So busy. There's so many meetings. There's so many things that you got to do as a leader, but you got to get above it. You got to get above the clouds and just kind of look at the strategic game plan and really look at the data, focus on what's going on and slow down and like, all right, this is working. This is moving the needle. We need to shift in this direction versus just being go, 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 busy, busy, busy all the time. It's kind of like if I'm going to go cut down a tree, first thing you need to do is sharpen your axe. But unfortunately, we're just grabbing the axe and we're just starting to chop down the tree, and it's just not falling as quickly as it would if we would just spend a little bit more time really sharpening the axe and figuring out what we need to do, what's working, what's not working.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being here. I think, this conversation it applies to anybody, no matter if you're a real estate agent or if you're just an entrepreneur or if you're just working at a company or if you have this idea to be your own boss. Like sharpening your skill sets before you dive all into doing something is valuable in any way or anything that you're doing in life.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of Real Estate Matters, helping you double your sales and build a thriving business. But real success is about impact. That's why Matt's team has built over 140 homes for families in Central America, changing lives beyond real estate. Loved what you heard? Subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a fellow agent. For more expert insights, visit mattcurtisrealestate.com or find us on social media @MattCurtisRealEstate. See you next time on Real Estate Matters.